Yeah, great to be on. Thanks for having me, Miles. Obviously, not the best time in Cavs Nation, but there's still never a bad time to talk about the Cavs.
You're like Chris. So we got Chris Allen in studio, who's a huge Cavs fan, and we got Caleb Henry. He is a Knicks guy, and I am a Celtics guy, but that's okay. Let me ask you first about the series with the Knicks. All right, if the Cavs hang on and win game number one, do you think it's a whole different series, or the Knicks were just going to win no matter what?
Oh, no, absolutely a different series. Because you think about the Cavs team that we saw in Game 7 against Detroit, that was an amazing Cavs team. And you got that team for 40 minutes, right? You're up by 22, everything's going well. And then all of a sudden, the Knicks just flipped a switch. And when a team flips a switch like that, and you can't get a couple of quick buckets, anything to stem the tide, that's it. And because they did that, they saw that they had a way to wear down the Cavs, and they never came back from it. As soon as the Merrill shot rimmed out, you kind of felt it was like 2018 all over again. The series is over after one game, unfortunately, even in a best of 7.
If they could have gone back, the Cavs could have gone back and changed one thing in this series that could have helped them win it. In your estimation, what was that the one thing they could have changed? And they said, it would be a whole different series.
Honestly, I would have taken James Harden off the court because I don't know that I've ever watched a team fail to stop transition as consistently as the Cavs. I don't think I've ever seen a player struggle to stop a fast break as much as I saw James Harden. He didn't try to block a single shot, didn't even commit any hard fouls. He just gave up the bucket every time, whether it was Hart or Alvarado, Clarkson, Bridges, Cat, everybody on the break. One-on-one with Harden. They didn't even pass, didn't even need to do the 2-on-1. He was slow. And for all the turnovers he had on one end, he was doing nothing to stop the bleeding on the other side. So truthfully, I would have played him less. I would have put in a guy like a Tyson or a Craig Porter in a position to thrive next to Mitchell instead, because it was clear that on both ends, Harden was just really getting passed through like a turnstile, unfortunately.
Zach, I would argue that the Cavs just kind of did this to themselves because of taking the first two series to 7 games, and you had to play every other day for like what seemed like a month. Would you agree that maybe even if they win that game against the Knicks, they probably didn't have the stamina to go a 6 or 7 game series again after doing those first two?
So fatigue was definitely a factor, and I think that's what caught up to them in the next 3. But these guys played throughout the year. There were injuries throughout, but the Cavs were as healthy as they could have been. Every Cavs playoff run until this one, there were guys out with injury. Remember, Mitchell had missed playoff games. Garland missed a lot of playoff games. Allen missed that Boston series a few years ago. They had all their pieces. So, tired or not, I think if they do win game 1 by double digits and they hold on, they strike a little bit of fear. Doing it in an arena like the Garden, which is one of the hardest playoff atmospheres to win in, I think they could have done something. If they were going to win the series, I don't know. But considering what we saw to that point, it made it feel like this was a team that could do it. Because remember, Mitchell had never made a conference finals. Harden hadn't been this far in 8 years. They got a healthy front court of Mobley and Allen for the first time all playoffs, because it took Allen a couple rounds to really find his legs with consistency. The Knicks were rested, and we saw the rust, and then the fatigue kicked in maybe at the end of that game. And really, I think if you do win that first game, same in 2018, maybe you won't win the series, but you could win a few games, and you can have a better finish to your season than what everyone calls a disappointment because you got swept in the conference finals after actually getting there.
What's the point of bringing back Kenny Atkinson? And I asked this, I'm a Knicks fan, so
Mm-hmm.
last year, a fantastic run. We go to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in God knows how long. And they fire Thibs. And and then they bring in Mike Brown, which I'm like, oh my God, what are we doing? But it worked out because Mike Brown actually plays his bench throughout the season.
Yeah.
But Kenny Atkinson had an awful series, a terrible series, didn't call timeout in game 1, had horrible comments. He just looked not to be the head coach of an NBA team after those games. And it didn't conjure up confidence with the team, I feel. And then they just bring him back. And then you talk about Harden and not wanting him on the floor during the biggest parts of your game. They're giving him more money. They're giving him years. Why be excited about the Cavs going forward into next year?
Yeah, so I will say I'm also surprised that Kenny Atkinson is coming back. I think he had 2 amazing regular seasons. and I think he's had 2 postseasons in a row. And we go back to last year, Game 5 against Indiana. It was understandable to sit Ty Jerome in that first half, but then they were playing a Jerome, hobbled Garland, and Mitchell 3-guard lineup against the Nemhard-Neesmith duo next to Halliburton, which was just getting physically shut down. Jerome's making a shot here, and then they're just getting passed through on the other side. Yeah, Kenny said they were analytically up, I think, 2-1 when they were down 3-0, and I still don't understand that. He's kind of just creating a bunch of content for people that do aggregate content about teams to just throw online and add more dialogue. I think that the playoff run was great until that last round, even going 7 twice, fine. Dan Gilbert's busting the fans, everything is positive, and then it collapses. Because I think Harden only had 10 more assists than turnovers in the whole postseason. Mobley and Allen were not consistently aggressive, whether that's for lack of touches or lack of consistency on the glass. And Donovan Mitchell ran out of gas, and Max Strus couldn't hit a shot, and Sam Merrill couldn't hit a shot. And even though he didn't play Game 4, Dennis Schroeder's impact was so minimal in those first 3 games. He missed 8 straight in Game 1. I think what's the exciting thing with the Cavs moving forward is the possibility that anything can happen. We don't know what this team is going to look like next season. I also think Kenny is going to be on the hot seat, that if they start the same way they did this year, he'll be gone by Christmas next year. And I think young guys like Tyson, who still had a great regular season, Tyrese Proctor, who was drafted 49th overall, had a really impactful rookie year, had some big games. I remember the 5-for-5 3-point fourth quarter against Washington as one of those examples. I think he scored 19. Sam Merrill, I think, is a guy that's going to bounce back again and be really good. And if Evan Mobley's still here, he's going to be 25 next year. He's far from even hitting his athletic prime. He showed shooting in the playoffs like we've never seen before. And I still feel like the guys on this roster have so much to prove, and I feel like we're going to get something closer to a regular season of the year before this one if they lock in and buy in, and if the guys that want to be there are there. Because, Harden's going to come back for 2 years, $60 million. The only positive there is that it's $9 million less, and I think it gets them under the second apron from the last thing I was checking, so it does give them a little flexibility if they let Dean Wade walk, which obviously would be tough, but they'd get another $6 million. There's some money that they can recoup that they wouldn't have been able to do if they had the initial roster with Garland. So maybe they can make some moves, because really, the only thing they're missing, even still, is a big wing. Hunter wasn't cutting it, and I'm sure we'll get to the rumors of a certain guy coming back for a third time. So if they can fill that void, and not Dean Wade, but a guy that's 6'8 to 6'10, can be aggressive, drive, make a few plays on both ends, that's the only hole. Because those are the teams that win. That's why the Pacers destroyed the Cavs. Aaron Nesmith was in that hole. Those are the guys. That's what the Pistons didn't have. That's why they lost to the Cavs. You need that big wing that can also score and be aggressive on both sides.
We're talking about Zach Weiss from the Across the Cavs podcast. Zach, yesterday we got the news that Mike Gansey left for Philadelphia to be their GM. Are we in a spot now where Johnny Bryant might be the next guy to go at getting a head coaching job in one of these openings?
So I know Orlando just brought in Sean Sweeney yesterday. So, and to my knowledge, I don't believe the Bulls have hired a coach yet. Is that correct?
I believe so, yeah.
So the openings aren't huge. I don't think he's going to get a head coaching job to start. It's very rare. I think Chris Finch was the last assistant to be hired from one team to another mid-season. When Minnesota brought Chris Finch in, he was an assistant with Nick Nurse and got brought in. So I don't think he's going to get a head coaching job. Obviously, congrats to Mike Gansey. He worked his way all the way up in the Cavs organization to becoming one of the key decision makers and part of a very important couple of years. I don't think he's leaving. I also think Johnny Bryant is Donovan's guy, and that doesn't affect Johnny Bryant. He wants to go. He's more than welcome. Jordan Ott did an amazing job in Phoenix. Damari Carroll, nice job with him as an assistant coach. I don't think Johnny Bryant's going to go. He could be, honestly, if something happens to Kenny, I think he could be next in line in Cleveland to at least be the midseason guy. 'Cause when JB took over, he was a midseason guy. When the Beeline experience didn't work, the Cavs have done that. Larry Drew, far from successful, but he had taken over and for Ty Lue, who took over midseason for David Blatt. The Cavs are no stranger to midseason coaching changes. Brendan Malone in 2005 for Paul Silas, LeBron's second year. It happens, but I think he'd be next in line with Kenny, and I think he's more likely to be the Cavs head coach by the end of next season than, if anything, than he would be to take another job right now.
Good point. You already mentioned it, but LeBron, we got to talk about it. We're a sports radio show here in Ohio. Is he coming back? He's back. Do you want him back? Yeah, you want him to come back. Absolutely.
So it's a very interesting conversation to have. When you asked me this 2 weeks before he signs in 2014, I'd say the Cavs are building something. They're proving that their whole existence isn't just LeBron. Because there was the Price, Daugherty, Nance, Elo era, post Ron Harper, with Ron Harper. Steve Kerr was there, and they have all these other great role players, Bennett and Hot Rod. And they were great. And then for 10 years, they get a few playoff appearances, but don't go anywhere. They get crushed in round one every year. They have the awful season before he comes in, gets drafted. Great success. 3 years of terrible. The fourth year, they win 33 games. We got Wiggins coming in. Maybe Bennett will turn it around. A healthy Varejao. Then LeBron comes back. They go to 4 straight finals. Whatever anyone thought about him before, that was a perfect tenure when he came back. So he goes to LA, where he's been, for 8 seasons now, which is very hard to believe. But here's my pro-con list on LeBron. It's pretty short both ways. The pros are very easy. Insanely talented. He's still got it. Doesn't have to play 35 minutes a game here. He can play 30. Hometown guy from Akron, 40 minutes away. And I think with LeBron and trying to save other money, you can sign some sharpshooters for cheap that you're missing and some other needs. And there's the con. The con of, bringing back LeBron. And this is my big thing. Everything you do with LeBron on your roster falls under a microscope. All the DeAndre Ayton stuff in LA is magnified, the issues, because they have LeBron. The guys struggling are a bigger deal because they don't have LeBron. The Dalton Connect stuff, he doesn't play. The rescinded trade's a bigger deal because it's LeBron's team. And if he does come back and then you don't win a title, you risk, that you ruin the storybook ending everybody wants, and potentially having to move Jared Allen definitively to bring, and maybe even Strus to get the money to bring LeBron back. You're just sacrificing a lot of younger talent to bring back your hometown guy who's going to be 42. So I would be happy if he comes back. I wouldn't be upset if he doesn't. But I think that's what you kind of have to think about when we get to that decision.
Zach, got about 1 minute left with you. Give us who's going to win the NBA title.
So I'm taking the Spurs tonight over the Thunder in Game 7. And I am going to take Knicks in 7 in the NBA Finals.
Let's go, Zach. How about that? Smart man. Zach Weiss, new best friend, Caleb Hattery. Zach, great job. How can people find Across the Cavs podcast?
So on Twitter, at Across Cavs, Instagram at Across the Cavs. You just straight up, you go to YouTube, Apple Pod, Spotify, look up Across the Cavs. You can find the pod, all things there. And there's a Substack as well under Across the Cavs, which is in progress, very early days. Everything there. And as always, you got to let them know.
Awesome stuff. Zach, no relation to Bob Weiss, former NBA head coach?
No Bob Weiss and not Walt Weiss, former Rockies manager and Braves shortstop either.
Great job, Zach Weiss. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you guys. Go Cavs.